Today I figured I'd do something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at a couple of guitar licks. These come from the solo of my song Prog GPT, which was a tune I wrote last year based off of AI prompts. So I asked Chat GPT to write me a chord progression and time signatures and musical style, all that kind of stuff. Now you can watch the full creation of this song on my channel. I did a couple of videos, 3 really long videos actually kind of covering the whole creation of this song. And the style of music it gave me was death metal reggae. So there's a bunch of crazy stuff later on, but at the end, there's just this long extended reggae section that happens. It's just over a single chord, an F major 7 chord. And it lasts for about 1.5 minutes, and there's a big solo over it. And there's a couple of cool lines in here that I thought would be worth looking at because they're super applicable in this kind of music, but also in other genres as well. So that's the first lick we're going to take a look at. Here it is played slowly. This is just an arpeggio lick played over the top of this F major 7, but there's some extensions and a little bit of a chord substitution here, so it's a little interesting to look at. Basically, I first start off by doing this F major 9 shape. Super common shape. I use this one all the time. It's kind of based off this classic 5-string sweep shape. But I add in the 7th, major 7, and then I do the 9th as well. This is kind of a shape I prefer. The major 7 shape, that's a classic shape that I learned first, but I actually kind of like the 9th better. It's easier to play and it sounds cooler, so. Right, this is a shape I use a bunch, and I can add in extra notes if I really want to, but here I'm just playing it as the straight arpeggio. And then I'm going to slide up to this A minor 7. So I'm playing this A minor 7 chord over top of the F. It's basically giving you a ton of different extensions. If we take a look at this in relation to the F major 7, you have the 9th, 7th, 5th, and the 3rd as well. And this is a chord substitution you can use a lot. So you take the 3rd of whatever chord you're playing over. In this case, I'm playing over F. So I'll take the 3rd A, and I'll play an arpeggio built off of that, minor 7 arpeggio in this case, because that's the one that's inside of this particular key. So over this F major 7, I'll play A minor 7, and it works perfectly, and you get all of those extensions without having to think too much about kind of complicated extended chords, that kind of a thing. So I go down that arpeggio, just literally straight down it, and then I go down it again, but I start 1 note higher. So here I started on the 7th of this chord, or I guess the 9th of the F major 7. And then I go. This is something I like to do all the time. Instead of just running arpeggios straight up and down, I'll run them down. So it's not just going straight up and down all the time. So that's that part. And then I ended off with some scale runs. It's literally straight up, I guess what would be an F Lydian mode if we're thinking of this as being F major 7. One nice thing about this kind of extended chord vamp where you have just one chord and it's really static with the harmony is that you can kind of get a little bit interesting with the notes you choose. At the beginning of the solo, I'm doing a lot of more F major stuff, so I'm playing B flats, right? That's the first part of the solo. I'm playing a lot of B flats there. And then later in the solo, I start introducing this B natural, right? for that Lydian sound. And because it's kind of a blank slate underneath, I can kind of go between those two different sounds and experiment with the tone a little bit. So here I'm going up this, I guess would be F Lydian. And it is literally just a straight scale, but I'm adding these slides in on each of the strings. And then I let this dissonance ring. So the whole thing's strung together. A couple of things rhythmically about this. This section is kind of a triplet feel, and I'm actually playing 16th notes over that. It's totally cool to do that. Now, it doesn't necessarily completely lock in with the sort of triplet groove underneath, but it definitely is kind of locking into the overall pulse that's happening here. Another thing I'm doing is starting this run on the and of 1, 1. Right, I don't always want to start things on the beat. It feels kind of cliche and predictable. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, technically, I'm sweeping through this for the most part. So I sweep, and if there's more than one note on a string, I'm doing hammer-ons. The way you pick it doesn't really matter that much. It's more about getting the notes out nice and cleanly. One of the trickiest things about doing these arpeggios, where you're doing one note per string, whether you're sweeping it or alternate picking it, is keeping the timing nice and even, right? I think that's the thing I probably work on the most when it comes to sweeping, is trying to be even and accurate with the timing. Not necessarily speed, but sort of evenness and how all of the notes are fitting within the beat. And this run would actually work incredibly well over the relative minor of F major 7 as well. So a D minor, like a D minor 7. So I'm going to have a D minor 7 drone play in the back, and I'll play this lick. You can kind of hear, it sounds a little bit different over that, but all of the notes work super well. In fact, you even get some further extensions if you're playing over the minor 7. So a lot of times a lick that you do in a major key context or in a minor context can work with the relative major or minor of whatever you happen to be playing over. So things that work over F major, for example, work over D minor, and they might actually work over other chords too, like probably would work over a G7 because you have a lot of those sort of B's and stuff. There's a lot of places you can use licks over different chords to give you different sounds. So it's worth experimenting with. You don't even have to necessarily come up with a whole new lick. You can try to just put that same idea in a different context to give you a different sound. And here's this second lick played slowly. Now, this one is basically a straight Pat Metheny ripoff. I kind of got the first part of this lick from a solo I transcribed with Pat Metheny's. He played on this live version of the song Have You Heard? It's one of my favorite jazz solos of all time. Absolutely incredible. But there's a lick he does somewhere in there. I think it was low or down, but something along those lines. And I kind of copped the first part of that, and I use it, fairly often. That was over a minor chord in that particular case. Here I'm playing it over the major 7. Would also work well over a D minor 7. Probably actually over like a G minor too. But here we're doing it over that F major 7. We're going to start on the 5th of the F major 7. And do just some scale runs there. And then we start getting chromatic. So there's the first part of the lick. There's lots of different ways you could pick this. Metheny would probably do a lot of those thirds with hammer-ons from nowhere. I'm actually hybrid picking, I believe, when I'm playing it faster. Yeah. But you could also alternate pick it too. Either of those sound really good. It kind of just depends on what feels right and what kind of a tone you want given this particular part. think for me it was a little bit more consistent to hybrid pick it. So if you've never moved these chromatic thirds around before, it's a little hard to do. There's a little bit of aim and accuracy involved. So then from there, the second part of the lick, more chromatics. Then I go into thirds that are actually within the key. Once again, I'm using more of this Lydian sound, so I have the B naturals. But earlier, have B flat. So I'm kind of mixing that major and Lydian sound here, kind of what I talked about earlier. You can kind of mess with the tonality because it's such a stagnant harmony. So there's the first part of the lick. And then at the end, I have this outside idea. And this is coming from, I guess you could think of it as coming from like a super Locrian melodic minor sort of sound. Like I'm implying an A altered chord or a E flat altered chord. I think in this context, it's probably better to look at this as being like from harmonic major. So F harmonic major, which would be a major scale with a flattened sixth. So that flat sixth is just more of an outside sound to add to this major seven. Kind of like what I'm doing with the major and Lydian thing, just adding an extra different note in here. And that adds this extra tension going into the next part of the solo. So when you're doing a more outside line, a good place to put it in is right before the beginning of the next section, or right at the end of a phrase. So in this case, it's the end of a 4-bar phrase. So I'm introducing this extra tension that then gets released at the beginning of the next phrase. There's really two important concepts I'm using here as far as outside sounds. One is this chromatic idea where I'm basically filling in the gaps with chromatic notes. So I'm starting on good notes, like I'm starting on the 5th. Then I hit the 3rd there. And then the 7th. So if you are using good notes and just adding chromatics in between, you can basically do whatever you want, and it's just adding extra color. Especially in this more kind of fusion context. Right? You can even do more chromatics down on that part of the lick too. So that's one idea here that's really useful if you want to try to get some outside sounds, just to add. Basically, any of those chromatic ideas work if I'm landing on good inside notes. And then, of course, that idea of tension and release that I talked about. Both of these are kind of really good basic ways to get into some outside playing. Implementing some of these outside sounds is super tricky. It definitely was for me at first. But having a couple of approaches that I can take that are a little bit easier to understand really helped me to kind of do this sort of thing a little bit more effectively. As I mentioned, for the picking here, it's kind of whatever works. I might go between alternate picking and hybrid picking depending on the speed of these sort of lines. Here it just fit better to kind of do it as hybrid picking, but you can pick it too. A little bit more of a challenge there if you want to kind of work on your picking hand. But if I had to do these faster, I would definitely hybrid pick it. So you can experiment with that. Really cool sounds, and these kind of work all over the guitar. They work lower, higher, different keys, all that kind of stuff. So the chromatic idea, especially those Pat Metheny chromatic thirds, really good stuff, super effective in fusion and jazz playing. I've used this particular lick, or at least variations on it, in all kinds of different styles of music. It's actually super effective. Definitely one that's worth learning. So there are a couple of cool fusion rock licks. Hopefully some of these ideas are helpful for you. If you want to check out the whole song, it's called Prog GPT. It's on streaming services under my name, Morgan Wick, or you can follow the link in this video's description to watch the playthrough video. If you missed it, over the last 2 months, I've done a massive series on the major scale modes, 8 different lessons, backing tracks, cool licks, all kinds of stuff. I am planning on combining all of that modal stuff into one big pack I'm going to sell for like $5 or something like that. So it'll have a PDF of all the modal information. All the videos will be available, backing tracks, the 5 licks, tabs, all of that in one place, kind of a big modal masterclass that you can just look at in one location. I'm going to do my best to put out a few lessons over the next couple of weeks. This next month is absolutely insane for me personally and professionally, but I enjoy making YouTube videos and I do get a lot out of this. So I'm going to do my best to put out some videos. At the very least, you'll see some sort of clips of my own music like I do. But if you enjoyed this lesson and you want to see more, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good stuff. And I'll see you all next time. Till then, stay proggy.